own an electric vehicle, or maybe a phone, or maybe just rechargeable lithium-ion batteries? All of these products require cobalt, a hard, lustrous blue-gray metal. Often associated with stunning jewelry and bold, bright pigments, cobalt is in fact an extremely problematic material. Non-renewable and frequently mined unsustainably and in particularly unethical ways, but at the same time imperative to the acceleration of society's technological development. Cobalt poses tough environmental justice questions that must be answered. What is the human rights and environmental cost? What can be done by companies and consumers to reduce these harms? And what will be the effect of these actions? Will they be enough? The Congo is home to more than half of the world's cobalt deposits, and mining there is expected to grow well in the future. The extraction of cobalt requires a significant amount of capital and infrastructure, such as roads. Some, but not all, of the environmental impacts of these processes are deforestation, water contamination, and loss of wildlife. Much of the labor comes from impoverished miners, many of whom are children as young as 6 years old. Out of the 255,000 cobalt miners in the Congo, 16% of the workforce are children, with some earning less than $2 a day for harsh labor. That's 40,800 children being paid less than $81,600 per day in total. For comparison, 40,800 New York City high schoolers earning minimum wage would be paid $4,896,000 per day if they worked 8 hours per day. That's more than 60 times what children in the Congo are being paid to work in dangerous, unhealthy conditions. Dividing the amount of carbon released by cobalt production by the amount of carbon released by stainless steel production gives us 4.6. That means that cobalt production releases 4.6 times the amount of carbon released by stainless steel production. How are Stuyvesant students contributing to the impacts and demand for cobalt? Let's take a look at the impact of teenage phone ownership. We can assume that every Stuyvesant student owns a smartphone. According to a 2018 statistic from NPR, each phone contains 8 grams of cobalt. As a disclaimer, this number may vary across phone models and companies. Given that there are 3,357 students at Stuyvesant, the total amount of cobalt in our phones is 26.86 kilograms. Combining this number with the amount of carbon emitted per kilogram of cobalt production, there is 760 kilograms of CO2 emitted for the cobalt used in Stuyvesant students' phones. Keep in mind that this number does not include the usage of more electronic devices like laptops, smartwatches, and electric vehicles. And it doesn't account for the rate at which Stuyvesant students purchase new phones and the rate at which technology companies are expanding the use and size of lithium-ion batteries. With all these factors, the environmental cost of cobalt quickly begins to add up. Companies have promised to move towards more sustainable cobalt usage. Apple, for one, has recently proclaimed that they will be using 100% certified recycled cobalt in batteries by 2025. It's unclear whether certification will be granted by a third party or whether this term is simply used to greenwash and promote a more environmentally friendly image for Apple. In fact, it's altogether unclear whether or not Apple and other companies will even achieve this goal, especially in an industry that immensely lacks transparency and accountability, and that depends on the ignorance of the public. We especially want to highlight that the statistics used in this video were extremely difficult to find in reputable, non-stakeholder sources. Although cobalt is an instrumental resource that we will increasingly require in new technology, companies and individuals, that's you, can and must help reduce the environmental and human justice impacts of cobalt mining. It may be initially difficult to adjust, but once we start, our collective action can have a significant impact on reducing environmental damage. We can start by donating and recycling old electronics. Bring them to your nearest charity, processing center, or tech company so that cobalt can be reused rather than mined anew. The United Nations study reported that 53.6 million tons of e-waste were generated in 2019, but only 17.4% of it was disposed of properly. We must also pressure companies to take transparent, swift action. Only by these actions can we truly change cobalt use. With these problems and potential solutions in mind, hopefully you are now more aware of cobalt usage around the world. Thank you.